with that being said, for tonight's event, we're excited to have an ethical marketing panel. During the event, there will be two portions, starting with a moderated section and discussion, and the second half being everyone going into breakout rooms and discussing different cases and examples. This will be a very hands-on discussion-based portion where we'll have three real companies, so be ready to chat in the second half of this event. With that being said, I'd love to introduce our moderator for this panel, who will kick us off in a few minutes, Professor Rebecca Ratner, the Dean's Professor of Marketing at the Robert H. Smith School of Business. She recently served as the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs for the Smith School. Dr. Ratner received a PhD in social psychology from Princeton University and has been a visiting scholar in the marketing departments of the Harvard Business School, Chicago Booth Graduate School of Business, and the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Prior to her position at Maryland, she was an assistant professor and associate professor at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Dr. Ratner has taught courses on consumer behaviors, marketing management, marketing for social value, which is an absolutely phenomenal course, and marketing research to MBA students, undergraduate students, and executives. Professor Ratner, I'll let you take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nima. So glad to be here and to see everyone. I'm going to be moderating the panel, that first half of the session tonight that Nima talked about. And so I'd like to now welcome the panelists and ask each of the panelists if you could introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your background. And so I think maybe to structure this so that everyone's not speaking at once, I'm just going to call on you one at a time. So Kim, could you kick us off?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Kim Godju-Alexander. I'm a director at Bethesda Green. We're a nonprofit based in Bethesda, Maryland. I've been doing B Corps work for about 4 years now. I am the jurisdictional lead for Montgomery County for the Best for DMV campaign. And Nima also serves on our steering committee for the Best for DMV campaign. And Nima, I want to say I love your tie. And so I wanted to, I'll be offering the B Corps perspective tonight, folks. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kim. We're so glad to have you. And Kushan, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I am Kushan. I work as a growth marketing manager at Teladoc, which is a digital health company. So definitely hoping to offer some perspective from kind of private sector, tech side marketing. And I am actually also a Maryland alumnus. So I was at the Smith School back in 2014, and yeah, very, very proud to be a Smith graduate and be with you all here today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kushan. Okay, Mallory, you are our third panelist.
Hi, everyone. I am Mallory Hooser. I'm an independent marketing and storyteller for Social Good. So I work mostly with nonprofits and mission-driven organizations, everything from government to education to tech startups. So I will be speaking from the nonprofit lens.
Wonderful. Thank you. Great to be able to hear the different perspectives that each of you brings to the panel tonight. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so I have a series of questions here that I'm going to ask you. And the first one, and this is a question for each of the three of you to answer, which is, how do you showcase your organization's key core values when you're displaying impact products or services in your marketing efforts? And why don't you feel free to just unmute when you want to chime in on that? Any of the three of you. Now, Mallory, maybe we should start with you. Should we go in reverse order from the introductions?
Sure, I can start.
Okay, thanks.
So I think first and foremost, in order to showcase the key values, I really take it upon myself to learn about the services that are being provided. So when you are an impact-driven organization, I feel like you can't truly bring to life your values unless you know how they come to life through the work. So spending that time, and then you have to look at each individual aspect. So whether that is in the kind of creative from the messaging and tone to how it's actually getting done, and ensuring that the steps you're taking and the work you're putting out there all tie back to those values. So really knowing what they are, knowing how they actually come to life, knowing the market in which they come to life for your consumers, and then every step of the way, make sure there's always a tie back to those.
Great. Thank you. Kushan, how would you answer that one? How do you showcase your organization's key core values?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to be at a company called Livongo, which was acquired by Teladoc. So if you hear me say Livongo from time to time, you can think of that as largely interchangeable. But a couple things that we think about. One is really who we're marketing out to. So when we're marketing out, especially in healthcare, a lot of people we're marketing out to an audience have chronic conditions, have comorbidities, are kind of worried about a number of different slights when it comes to the healthcare system. And so, really kind of understanding where our members are, things that they're concerned about, medication tracking, privacy, security, transparency, all of that is something we stress a lot in our marketing. Privacy and security is something that I think in every single thing that we send out, we align somewhere. Like, this is your data. This is something that you own. This is not like a Big Brother situation where we're leafing through a bunch of your healthcare data. And we want people to feel really, really comfortable. I think the other thing that we think about a lot is our internal core values. When a lot of companies will say that we care about diversity, we care about kind of equality, and really unearthing what is inherently unequal about the healthcare system. And I think within our marketing, one of the things that we really try to make sure is we have a good representation across samples that we use, and that includes a lot of different statistics, a lot of different imagery that represents the actual diversity of the people we serve, and it's not just kind of lip service that we care about diversity. And then even on beyond our marketing, we invest a lot in like the social determinants of health, invest a lot in research studies that kind of help us understand a little bit more about this, and really kind of making sure that everyone who works with Livongo and everyone who works with Teladoc knows that we are kind of serious about not only diversity within the company, but diversity, increasing like opportunity within the healthcare system as well.
It's like you're really living your values and then communicating about them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, Kim, how do you showcase your organization's key core values?
Sure. So our mission is building a sustainable urban ecosystem, and we do that through two different programmatic activities. So our first one is through our Be Green business, which houses our incubator and accelerator. And one of the things that's really special about our accelerator is that it's focused on environmentally focused companies and sustainable companies. And one of the trainings that we offer all of our new companies coming through our accelerator is B Corp certification, because we really feel like if a company really wants to be very mission driven and help the environment or conservation or be socially impactful, we offer that training for companies to start to embed those B Corp values from the beginning. So we require all of our companies to go through that training so that they're understanding what their impacts are, how they're going to lock that into their mission into the future, those sorts of things. Also, one of the things that the other side of the organization, we do a lot of environmental education, environmental projects, environmental policy, and we always want to invite as many people as we can into the conversation. So just as Kushan said, creating a welcoming space for anybody to, enjoy to be part of the conversation. So one of the things that we're offering in our organization is very small, I should mention, but Spanish translation is a large part of our is growing to be a large part of our marketing, because we haven't necessarily hit that invited that group into our sustainability work before. So we're trying to expand our values in terms of adding in different folks who speak different languages, and then also inviting folks maybe from different political affiliations, so that we're inviting all folks into to be a part of that conversation.
It sounds like a really rich definition of diversity on lots of different dimensions. Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. So The next topic here is greenwashing. And so the question, and this is a question for Kim and for Kushan, is could you explain terms to us like greenwashing and brand misrepresentation and give examples of when you've seen these? Kim, why don't we stick with you for this one? And then we'll go to Kushan.
Sure. Sure. So I'm a subject matter expert in B Corp certification. I was trained 4 years ago by B Lab, and B Lab was founded by 3 gentlemen who really saw the need for a third-party verification to address things like greenwashing. So greenwashing is basically saying that you're doing something and you're not actually doing it. So they really wanted to create a verification process that was going for for-profit businesses that was going to say, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. If we say that we're going to be sustainable, or if we say that we value diversity, we're actually going to do that in our business, and we're going to be able to prove that through our policies, through our hiring practices, through our environmental impacts, which is why we believe in B Corp certification to actually help companies walk that walk. So when a company comes to me and says, I'm a mission-driven company, I say, great, have you started your B Corp certification? Do you have any other third-party verifications? There's lots of third-party verifications out there, not just B Corp certification, but I always like to know if anybody else has verified the company so that I know that they're actually, somebody else is looking at them and saying, yes, this company is actually walking their talk. I'll give you a great example of a company that does this really, really well, and that's Patagonia. So Patagonia is a B Corp certified company. They have a number of third-party verifications, and they are not a company that greenwashes at all. They are very transparent about their materials. They're very transparent about their products. They do a lot of environmental work. I really think that they're one of the gold stars in the landscape for a model that other businesses that should be looking at.
Nice. All right. Thank you. Kushan, what would you say in terms of kind of just defining greenwashing and brand misrepresentation, or giving examples of when you've seen greenwashing or this sort of misrepresentation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll kind of take a little bit of a different angle than Kim. Totally agree with everything she said. But, I think that there are kind of two dimensions to it. One is very, kind of willful brand misrepresentation, which is that you are like stating a fact and trying to like entirely get people to believe in it, regardless of whether or not it's true. And one recent example of this is if you all have heard of the company Oatly. Oatly is a company that sells oat milk, but they've like put out a lot of advertisements that basically have said something to the tune of, the dairy and meat industries do more harm to carbon emissions than like all the planes, trains, and cars in the UK combined, which is just like kind of absurd. And it's like something that they keep putting in their marketing, and it's very much like, talk to your dad about his milk. And that it's something that's very like easily disprovable, and something that they keep running with. And ultimately I don't have like too much experience with the product itself, but from a marketing standpoint, that is something that for a lot of people, and when we're talking about it now, it seems like, oh, maybe it is clearly absurd. But for a lot of people who don't understand the differences, Oatly is trying to like pull a little slate, which is, oh, you don't have to research all of this, just trust us. And they're really going for the emotional touch, which is that, if you drink milk, if you drink regular cow's milk, you're like destroying the world. And so I think that's like one example that a lot of companies will do, where they'll almost try to pull you in by emotion and hope that you don't look up and do more research and really kind of figure it out. And I think the other one is a little bit less willful, but still in some ways very harmful, which is this kind of layer of I think it's colloquially called woke washing, which is that brands will advocate and support marginalized causes, but there's clearly other very kind of systemic issues at play that they're not addressing. And like one example is Nextdoor. I think Nextdoor is a fun app, but last year during the protests for George Floyd, Nextdoor had an ad that was like, there's no place for hate in the neighborhood, and they were trying to kind of capitalize off of it. But Nextdoor has also been an app that has gotten a lot of criticism for the way it handles race, and it's gotten a lot of criticism for kind of the role that certain users on its platform play in like perpetuating a lot of this stuff that they claim to not stand for. And so I think that's a case where either Nextdoor like doesn't know that this is going on, or they're just very, very much trying to, cloak themselves in really, really good PR. And I think in some ways that is a misrepresentation as well. But one brand I think that does really live by its values is Ben & Jerry's. And Ben & Jerry's is one of those brands where so much of what they do has nothing to do with ice cream. When they were like, when all this was happening last year at George Floyd, they wrote an article, it was called like Abolish White Supremacy. And it was just like, what? But yeah, it's like Ben & Jerry's. And they have like ice cream flavors called Pecan Resist. And I think it's like very hard for someone to see what Ben & Jerry's is doing and see any layer of inauthenticity in it. I think they're like very much a brand that through a lot of their value chain and through a lot of their advocacy really represent the values that they purport to.
Kushan, can I just ask you a quick follow-up on your Nextdoor example?
Yes.
Are you saying like the app, it's the people who were they're sort of citizens and they were posting things that were hateful and Nextdoor was allowing it to go on? Or was it more like management or employees of Nextdoor were somehow doing things that were problematic?
The former, yeah. So there was like, actually a little bit of both. There was like accusations of a lot of moderators deleting posts that could be considered activism, which I think was something they were criticized by. And I think like one of the things to note about something like the Nextdoor example is I think a lot of companies will try to say like, we'll try to stay away from social issues as if they're like some mysterious abstract phenomenon that like brands can't actually control, when in reality, a lot of brands are kind of, no matter if you like exist in society, you're probably doing something that is like not considered great. And I think a lot of brands try to skate over that and just say like, hey, we clearly don't hate anybody and we clearly like love the world. And then for some brands, it actually just looks worse because all of this other stuff is going on.
Thank you.
That's to call out Nextdoor, but
you're right. No, I mean, it's so helpful for us to have some of these concrete examples. I'm sure some of the students are going to want to be looking these up and reading a little bit more about them. So Kim, a question to you. Kushan was just giving some examples of companies that are doing some things that might be considered greenwashing or brand misrepresentation. Would you consider it unethical, what these companies are doing?
Personally, yes. I absolutely think that it's unethical. An example I can give you is a company that is actually a very well-known brand of a company that I know that I wish they were B Corp certified. Unfortunately, they're not. And that's Honest Tea. Honest Tea is a very mission-driven company, and the owners was fantastic. Seth Goldman was fantastic, and fortunately for him, he was able to sell to Coca-Cola. But I don't know the future. I hope that the future of Honest Tea is going to be able to remain a mission-driven company, even though it's under that Coca-Cola label. So I think, Honest Tea, they did a really, really great job of trying to be as transparent as possible where their products from, and trying to be a sustainable company. One of the things that somewhat, I'd probably say just bothers me a little bit is that Honest Tea is a great company, and they're serving low sugar drinks, but unfortunately it's all served in single-use plastic. And that's something that always bothered me a little bit is, they have this really great mission, but unfortunately their part of their business model is not super environmentally focused, which always sort of defeated the mission for me. And that's just one example that I have, that I just wanted them to be better. I liked their mission, but I just wanted them to be better. And now that they're a Coca-Cola brand, I mean, maybe there's some sustainability efforts. Coca-Cola does have some sustainability efforts, and maybe that could be part of it.
That's great. Well, and it's so helpful to hear about examples like that, where the company really is mission driven, and yet you're seeing areas where they could do even more. So thank you for sharing that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next question is for Kushan and Mallory. How can organizations be more honest with the marketing and communication of their products and services? And related to this, what organizational challenges prevent organizations from openness? And how does that change or impact your consumer relationship? So how to be more honest, and what are some of the challenges that might prevent openness? Mallory, should we start with you on that one?
Yes, my cat is going to join for this.
Oh, correct. Terrific.
It wouldn't be, I feel like, a Zoom without a pet. So,
so cute.
Yeah, so I think in my experience, the hardest part in an organization being fully honest with the consumers has been that they don't actually trust the consumers. There's a lot of fear there, and they're afraid to let them behind the curtain. So they might value inclusivity. And when you look at their staff, it is pretty inclusive. But when you look at their board, it's not. Right. And so I think you've got to trust your audience to say, this is where we could be better, and this is where we're doing good. And you have to give them opportunities to kind of peek behind the curtain. While I think Ben and Jerry's and Patagonia are like phenomenal examples, the companies I work with are not always that perfect. And there are areas for improvement. And sometimes that's like really scary for them to admit, because I think, they're afraid of losing consumers or being critical, and there's potentially a lot at risk or upsetting donors. And so it's just slowly but surely getting them to get creative in the ways they bring people behind the scenes. And I think that's where social media plays a big role, because anybody can join that conversation and you can invite anyone in. Drew, the second part of that question, which I think was, what are some of those obstacles that are in
right? What are the challenges?
I think a top-down hierarchy can be a challenge. I think having too many decision makers in a room can be a challenge. I think if you have a very visionary CEO or leader, that's helpful. But once you start to kind of piece that apart, and the bigger you get, I think that is harder for you to put honesty out there. When you have a larger group of people, you have a lot of opinions and decisions. So I think depending on how the company's decision makers are structured and what voices you have at the table really, really matter. I also think culture and relationships with employees also really matter. And so if you are supposed to be a really positive brand, doing good for other people, but you have a toxic work environment, right? That doesn't really line up. And again, people are being more vocal. There's glass doors, there's ways to share that. And so you've got to practice what you preach within your organization as well as within the work.
Mm-hmm. Right, because you're going to be called out for it. You'll be found out.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. So, Kushan, what is your perspective on this, about how organizations can be more honest in their marketing and communications, and what organizational challenges you have seen that can prevent that kind of openness?
Totally. So I work in healthcare. It is a extremely already regulated industry. And one of the big things that we have within our company to really support marketing is we have kind of a regulatory review board. And there's someone on this board coming in from the clinical side, from the FDA side, from local government side, from branding side, and all of them kind of come together to review largely every piece of marketing that comes out of the organization. I can't speak for all other healthcare orgs or all other regulated companies, but I'm sure a lot of them probably have something very, very similar. It is like a very scary process, especially in regulated industries. Like all you need is really one complaint for you to be posted on like the FDA website, which we don't want. So that in itself, I think, is a huge support system where you have people inside of the company anchoring you and helping you understand from a legal perspective, regulatory perspective, and brand perspective what you're doing. Over time, you kind of start to build your intuition a little bit better. I know when, like, sometimes I'll be writing copy and in my head I can hear our lawyer's head and just being like, do you really want to say that, Kishan? And then some of it could be like very, very innocent copy. It's not necessarily something that's like totally like complete flat out potential lie, but a lot of like really innocent copy can be turned into a lot of different ways, and so it's always helpful to internally have that reassurance board.
Do you have even an example top of mind? I don't know if you do, of like what something that might seem like innocent copy that you realize is not so great.
Yeah. So if we have one of the earliest things that I got dinged on was with Livongo, especially with our health plans, they support the program for free. And so a lot of times when we're reaching out to them for communications, it'd be like, reminder that you have you can get supplies for free. You can get this for free. You can get that for free. But the reality of that is, if you tell anybody they can get anything for free, they'll be asking for a lot of things. And in reality, we can give like maybe 2 things for free, which is like the device and like the actual Landsets that come with the device. And so that was like kind of an example of something that seems innocent. It's like not entirely wrong, but based on how it could turn really quickly. The other thing we have to be really careful about is health stats. So if we say like, Livongo can help you increase your or decrease your A1C by like 1.5 something, it is like a really scary statistic, because now the average person who may not be in the sample of the research we did could end up believing that, and that ends up being scary as well. I will say the other thing I do a lot, which is like not related to my job, is I spend a lot of time on social media. A lot of time on Twitter, a lot of time on Instagram. And I think part of the value here is that you can see what dishonest marketing looks like. And I think that is also like an interesting muscle to build over time, because, for us, it's like very rare that we're going to get something out there that has a flat out lie, unless it goes like to all of these people. But there are so many companies where there's so much I see on Twitter where the mob kind of grows really, really quickly. So if a company is throwing out marketing and it's like not honest, and it's not kind of in line with the organization's values, they will get dinged on social. And so like the muscle I usually build in the back of my head is, if I was writing this thing and then like shared it on Twitter or LinkedIn, would it be misinterpreted in any way? And that's not something I think you can necessarily learn without just spending a lot of time on social yourself. So if you are like getting into marketing and doing any sort of copy or PR or external facing marketing, and people tell you that Twitter is a waste of time, you can tell them that I told you otherwise. spend a lot of time on Twitter.
It's so interesting.
Learn what that stuff is.
Thank you. It's so interesting. It used to be, they'd say like, be careful everything you say, because what if it ends up on the front page of the Washington Post or on the front page of the New York Times? But now it's like, okay, well, what if I say this and it ends up, on Twitter? What is the Twitterverse gonna say about this? So really, really good to be
and I do think one like recent example is Burger King on International Women's Day. They did an ad for like supporting more female chefs, and their ad started with like women belong in the kitchen, and it was a really actually nice initiative, but the marketing was just such a blunder. Like they posted that and then everyone was just like, how did you think this was like gonna roll over? Because they posted all of the supporting stuff in like future tweets and in the press release, which like no one really reads, right? So everyone saw that, and like I think that was a situation where Burger King could have used more intuition. I don't know.
Right. Okay, so now a follow-up question. This is to Kim and Mallory. What steps do you consider when achieving and maintaining an ethical brand positioning? So when you're seeking ethical brand positioning, what steps do you consider?
I'll go first. So for me, from the B Corp perspective, as I mentioned, that third party verification, and if a company is able to maintain their B Corp certification over time, that's a signal to me that they are continuing to maintain their brand in an ethical way, and that they're doing third party verifications, and they're being transparent with their employees, their workers, their audience, their customers. They're involving their community, and the community has input on what their business looks like and how they're interacting with the community. So for me, that B Corp certification or that third party verification of any kind is really a way for them to say, these are our values. And as you can see, we're living them over time, and we're able to maintain that certification over time. And you can see the work that we're doing in our community, because you get out and you meet their leaders and you meet their employees. And a lot of B Corp companies that I work with have specific volunteer days. So the employees get out and they're working with local nonprofits, and they're able to do other activities with other businesses, so that they're interacting and they're able to see through that transparency of interaction within their community. Their workers are able to be transparent with the community about how the working conditions and the culture is. So for me, it's that third party verification. If they're able to maintain that verification over time, that's really a signal to me that they're a good company, and that they're producing ethical marketing, and that their brand is what they say that it is.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, that third party certification is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mallory, what are your thoughts on that? Achieving and maintaining the ethical brand positioning.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different for nonprofits, right? They don't have a lot of, they're not usually verified by a third party. They do have different ways of validating. But I think in general, it comes with ensuring that everything, not just the positioning, but the strategy, the execution, all ties back to the values. So I find that whatever your values are, when you are kind of developing your brand, developing your company, that becomes a common language among the staff, and should become what all your executions are rooted in, what your all marketing ideas are rooted in. So whenever you pitch a creative idea, whenever you pitch a campaign, it should be very clear, and it should be in your pitch how it ties back to those values. And I find that's when one, you have more effective conversations around the work, because it's an undeniable kind of agreement and goal among the staff. But then you also kind of can create more fun opportunities to interact with your audience over time. So just constantly coming back to those values.
So it sounds like you're sort of highlighting the role of internal communication around the shared values.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
With a lot of nonprofits, and you're doing it mostly in-house, right? Like you're putting all your marketing efforts in-house. You don't have a lot of resources. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, not a lot of small nonprofits don't have the kind of funding to put behind marketing. So it's a little bit more scrappy. And in those cases, it's a real lot of it is done internally.
Mm-hmm. All right. Excellent. Thank you. So now we're up to our final question, all of us together in this large session, which is about future trends. So this is a question for Mallory and Kushan. What are future trends that you've noticed since the COVID-19 pandemic and social movements such as Black Lives Matter? Mallory, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I don't think honesty is a trend anymore. I think it's an expectation and a requirement. I think you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And I think you, as we discussed earlier, you're going to be called out if you're not. People are not afraid to say or move on if they are not happy with kind of your level of honesty. And if they are in general tired of being lied to and accepting those lies. So I don't think honesty is a trend. I think it's an expectation for consumers. Mm-hmm. And then I think we're also going to see a lot more when we talk about transparency. I think people are going to want to see who is doing the communicating. So who is putting out those messaging? And if those people don't represent the audience that you're trying to reach, I think that's going to create issues. So if you, or a group of men that are marketing products for women, curious to see who's behind the Burger King example, right? Like, I think people are going to want to know that. And I think that as we're evaluating kind of brands and services and products that are out there, I think we're going to want to know who's talking about it and who's coming up with ideas.
Great. Thank you, Mallory. All right, Kushan, what are your thoughts on future trends?
Yeah, I will thumbs up everything Mallory said as well. I think one of the most interesting developments of last year is how many products have really changed in terms of both their external branding as well as kind of the agency to change it. We saw this with Land O'Lakes. They're removing the Native American women from their packaging. Aunt Jemima, Mars is reconsidering branding the Uncle Ben's rice. The Colgate's toothpaste that was labeled Darky since like 1989, which a lot of people don't even know about because no one talked about it. But now it's like being rebranded. I think the most prominent one a lot of people are probably familiar with is the Washington football team, the entire rebranding there. And I think like it gives it gives a really interesting realization about a lot of these big corporations that in some ways they had the power to do this really the entire time. And they had the resources to do this really the entire time. And so I think like moving forward, we're going to see less and less people really able to make that argument, right? That, oh, we don't have, there's like too much red tape to do this. Like, hey, if the Washington football team can rebrand, as far as I'm concerned, that basically means everyone else can. But I think on top of that, outside of actual like product rebranding and reevaluating and re-auditing a lot of inventory across organizations, I think just higher sensitivity in messaging. And within COVID specifically, we're seeing a lot more ads that are focused indoors, and a lot more ads that are kind of focused on the bigger uniting issues around COVID. A lot of like influencers are now marketing vaccines as kind of like a go-to. So I think for a lot of brands that were really disassociated from the world, there's so much more to lose now with a tone deaf ad in 2022 than there was any time in the past 2 decades. So I think brands are really ironing out what is kind of the core sensitivity we need to address here, and I think brands will continue to do that moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Nima, back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you all for that amazing discussion. We're so excited to just have all of these perspectives, experiences, mindsets. And what we're going to do now is Sarah's about to break us out into 5 different breakout rooms. One of the moderators, or Gabe and I, will be moderating. We'll be sharing 3 corporate examples of both the good and the bad of certain brands and how they've been presenting themselves. What you're going to do amongst yourselves is discuss what you like, what you don't like, how you feel, and bring in those examples and stories that our panel just shared, and how you feel it may apply, whether it's a B Corp, a nonprofit, or for-profit. So once we break out into these breakout rooms, just chat about as many of the 3 examples for the next 15 minutes.
All right, awesome. It looks like most people are back from their breakout rooms. So I just want to thank CSVC for coming in and working with us on this event tonight, and also all of our amazing panelists who spoke with us and led the breakout rooms just now, and also Professor Ratner for moderating this panel. This was really awesome, and I know just based on my breakout rooms discussion that we all learned a lot about greenwashing and a lot about ethical marketing from this panel. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. And AMA members, if you saw it in the chat, if you could just please fill out the feedback form that is in there after the event tonight, that would be awesome. But yeah, thank you again and have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Gianna.